Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time it is for you in the world. I hope you're having a good one. We're at it again today with another news and react stream. As per usual, we will start it off with "Stay Free" with Russell Brand, which has quickly become my favorite independent news source. He's a pretty entertaining guy and actually provides pretty, I won't say the most objective, but pretty objective fucking news reporting, and definitely news reporting that is not swayed by corporations, which is kind of the most important thing. And so it's in rare supply these days. I gotta go flip a light one real quick, and then we'll get this thing started. My camera was gonna struggle with that lighting. Okay. Well, we're a little late today, so let's just go ahead and dive right into it without much to do.
If you're living, you lunatics, this is Stay Free with Russell Brand. We're streaming live. Hello, Vandana Shiva. Are you the new...
I buffer a bit so I could skip things like this. The intro of his has gotten longer and longer.
Live on the internet, on Rumble. The first 10-15 minutes we put up in all sorts of places, but after that, when I need to speak freely, we're exclusively available on Rumble, and we're going to need to speak freely today.
I gotta tell you guys,
from Fox News,
we've
got Kat Timpf,
just woke
commentator I met
up.
when I went on Greg Gutfeld this time. Our
Got out
Fox
the
News
shower
going to be
and
able to continue to pay people with their massive out-of-court settlement. And does this mean that democracy is officially not rigged, that elections are not rigged now because Fox making those claims on air while privately they exchanged texts saying that they didn't believe them themselves, which, by the way, sounds very similar to the American government's official stance on the Ukraine-Russia conflict, publicly saying this is a winnable war, go Ukraine, private round the back, we ain't getting none of that territory back, never admitting that there are boots on the ground of US personnel. These are the content of the recent leaks that you may not have heard about, because all anyone will tell you is this guy calls himself the OG. He's in chat rooms. He probably masturbates into a sockin. That's not real proper news, is it?
What?
We bring you real news to a sockin. That's not real proper news,
is it? I have no idea what the fuck a sockin is.
Real news will always be about establishment narratives, challenging them and breaking down centralized power. So, whilst we'll talk a bit about Fox News' payout, we'll be asking bigger questions. Does this mean an end to systemic corruption? Does this mean that the next time there's an election in your country, the side that loses won't be saying, the election was rigged? And does it mean that the only answer is secession now, that America needs to accept its too vast a territory for one centralized, corporatized, lying, corrupt, globalist government, and it's time to decentralize, devolve, and bring true democracy to America? Let me know in the chat if you think that's the kind of direction that America should head in, or should they double down on authoritarianism, censorship, surveillance, the way things appear to be going. If you're living in New York City now, watch your back, there's a digidogger coming your way. Not having learned the basic lessons of RoboCop, RoboCops are being introduced and made to sound all favorable and chummy with the use of the cute moniker Digidogs. It's only a Digidog that's tyrannizing me. What's that just shot me in the back? It was a Digidog. How can I stay mad at you? Would you like another silicon chip? Would you?
That part is so crazy to me. The fact that we're rolling out robots with guns. We have basically discussed this as a society so many times over, how much this is definitely a bad idea. I mean, the fact that it was going to happen inevitably is no shock to me. But the fact that it's going to happen with so little pushback is absolutely shocking to me. how was nobody actually fucking up in arms about this? But no, like, there's practically nobody raising any real fucking protest to this. It is mind-boggling.
Would you like a semiconductor? We ain't going to Taiwan, baby. Not now, not never, unless it becomes profitable. Once we click
Unless
over
it
to
becomes
being
profitable.
exclusively on Rumble, we're going to bring you a breathtaking, mind-bending, bone-breaking tale about China potentially developing a certain medicine even before a particular outbreak was even recognized. Begging the question, if the outbreak hasn't happened yet, how come they're developing a medicine for it? Is this a conspiracy theory, or is this just another one of those news stories that the mainstream will be reporting 6 months to a year down the line? Let me know in the chat which you think it is. So there it is. Fox settled out of court for saying that Dominion's voting machines are faulty.
Well, hold on. I think, pretty much I think a lot of people, pretty much agree. Okay, this virus came from the Wuhan lab. And the Wuhan lab was studying the virus ostensibly for the very purpose of creating cures to these kinds of things. So, I mean, if they were close to, had already completed a cure, that would not surprise me. And given what we know about the Chinese Communist Party, if they had withheld that cure while the rest of the world got devastated by it, and even a good portion of their own populace, that also would not surprise me. Does not necessarily mean any actual intentional release of the virus or anything like that. Not that that might not be the case, but I'm saying it doesn't necessarily mean that. So I think it is very likely true that the virus came from the Wuhan lab, and the Wuhan lab was probably already close to, if not having already completed, a vaccine for this virus. Those two things sound pretty true, especially the first one.
It turns out they're some of the best damn voting machines that money can buy. Fantastic stuff. In other news, there's a new voice in town. There's a new political power rising up. There's a man who will embrace vulgarity with a brazenness heretofore not seen. We've often said on this channel that Donald Trump's power is drawn from the fact that within systemic corruption, a person that embraces vulgarity, a person that can say, yeah, I know there are tax loopholes, I used them. I know the system's rigged because I participated in rigging it. We'll be looking right now at Donald Trump's magnificent cards. And later we'll be looking at some Democrat corruption too that suggests that they're in no position to attack Trump. That's why he is Teflon to their slurs, because they ain't got no basis upon which to attack him. Joining me for all of this and more is my very, very neatly dressed on-screen assistant, Gareth Roy.
Oh, thank you.
Giving you a full... Did you like that?
To be
announced. So I thought I would do that. I thought I'd give you an on-screen announcement. Are you the sort of person who would, under any circumstances, get a Donald Trump collectible card?
Well, I don't know. I'd have to see. I imagine it's a very low-key advert for it.
He doesn't exaggerate the significance of these cards. He doesn't suggest that they're important non-fungibles. Fungible is not a word you ever thought would make it into the mainstream, but here it is, fungible. It's here to stay. We'll be talking about Fox's out-of-court settlement, but let's have a look at Donald Trump's latest gambit. It's pretty cool. Have a look.
Hello again. This is your favorite president, Donald Trump, with some news you are going...
Do you think he'd record something to a phone? Do you think that someone just puts a phone and goes, oh, we're doing some more of them cards?
Yeah.
And then he just does that?
Yeah.
I agree.
I bet he does it in one take.
One take, easy.
I really love. A few months ago, we almost broke the internet when I announced my Trump digital trading cards. These beautiful Trump cards made...
Beautiful.
So fucking crazy that this is a thing.
We have progressed beyond irony, beyond post-modernity, where Trump, far from being embarrassed about an image of himself as a firefighter or as a rock star, literally will embrace it. And I reckon that tells you that we're living in something so lurid and so vivid that there's nothing that he can do. Like when he famously said he could shoot someone on Madison Avenue, is that we're living in such a nihilistic maelstrom now where we know that figures like Biden are only inadvertently honest in so much as they are like a kind of barely vivacious cadaver orating badly from the pulpit, that they somehow represent what they are without ever telling you the truth. And stories like this one, like, oh, Fox have had to do this massive out-of-court settlement. Hooray! Hooray for democracy! Hooray for justice! Not really. Clearly, America is systemically broken. Clearly, the mainstream media is broken. Clearly, you get no congressional options that mean anything in a system where there are wealth transfers in the trillions during a time of poverty and suffering.
This is all stuff that is, as he says, very clear, which makes it so crazy that we're still debating left versus right in a time where it's so obvious that it doesn't fucking matter.
I'm referring to the pandemic.
Continues
At a
to baffle
time where
me.
50% of federal budgets go to the Pentagon, 50% of that then ends up in the military-industrial complex in private contractors' hands. These are not the kind of policies that you want implemented, are they? Let me know in the chat in the comments. Would you go, oh yeah, could you send 10 billion to Taiwan? That's happening. 10 billion's going to Taiwan in aid. Did you know that? Did you vote for it? Let me know. I don't remember voting for it, but then I'm not American. You know, all of these systems, all of this expenditure is set up to support a system that requires constant war in its mouth. It's a war-devouring machine. All this stuff is a sideshow. There's, in a sense, Trump's cards are as important as the Fox payout, or Hillary piously saying, oh, he used to say, lock me up. Well, he should be locked up. It's all, as we know now, theatre. There is no meaningful difference between the actors on this stage. No meaningful difference. I know some of you have personal affinities with or affiliations for some of them, but I'm offering you this. What difference does it really make if you don't make some systemic change? Let me know. Let me know in the chat or the comments. Have a look.
Headlines all over the world because of the speed at which they sold. Original cards sold out so fast. Everybody is asking me to do another series. Well, I've got some fantastic news for you. My Trump digital trading cards are back with a bang. Series 2, the new collection, features incredible artwork of me as a rock star and also as a monster trucker. People
He has to list some of the ones.
The truck.
I wonder if they gave him an option.
They must have done.
Which ones to highlight.
Yeah.
Like, which ones do you want to say? Yeah, the Rockstar one, the Trucker one.
Because he'll do so many that eventually they'll like run out, and it'll just be like standard things. Me as a man collecting the bins or something.
Me looking at my own Trump non-fungible cards. It'll become a sort of a self-devouring vortex of non-fungibility.
love to collect baseball cards, but why settle for that?
Off a baseball card. I'm sick of this. This is just baseball.
Yeah, with maybe some bubble gum in it or something.
It's not even very nice bubblegum.
No.
What's that powdery stuff on the surface? Why is there a zigzag down it? I don't want that.
Yeah.
I want a non-fungible Trump rock star. Some odd hybrid of Elvis Presley and John Bon Jovi and Donald Trump. And I'm willing to pay money for that, actually, to get
I wonder
it.
who is
You
getting
can
paid to
collect
make
the
these and
greatest
how much they're
trading
getting
card in
paid.
history. My Trump digital trading.
Greatest trading card in
It's
history.
true.
There's no way of measuring that. There's no way of measuring that. Is there monetarily?
I don't think so.
Weight? Impact? I mean, what metric do you use to make these claims, damn it? But in a world of pure theatre, then why not have this? If Jake Tapper can turn up on CNN saying, you're not going to believe this, Fox claiming to be a news outlet, when CNN, as you know and I know, are every bit as bad, is in a sense only different by degree. Have a look now at Jake Tapper on CNN. Okay, let's have a look.
Fox trying to put a positive face on what can only be interpreted as one of the ugliest and most embarrassing moments.
That's performance. He's shaking his head, right? That he's performing the news. The graphics are grandiose and filled with pomposity and self-importance. So Trump's cards, which will be being mocked all over TV now, you'll see him being mocked on late night stuff. It's only an amplification of something that passes as ordinary mainstream reporting. Look at this. Oh, Fox calling themselves a news. I mean, I can't believe I'm going to say this. I'm going to actually laugh. This is performance. So if the milieu becomes brazen vulgarity, then someone who is a master of brazen vulgarity will succeed in that landscape. Not to mention that the system itself is so devoid of moral authority, so incapable of delivering meaningful change, that a master of rhetoric, a master of narrative, is going to succeed in that space.
In the history of journalism, Fox issued a statement saying, quote, "We are pleased to have reached a settlement of our dispute with Dominion Voting."
Dispute. Oh, it breaks me to even have to report this stuff. Like, to have this level of haughtiness, to speak from a position of such piety, you cannot work for a network that has been involved in falsely reporting on the Russiagate stuff, the Steele dossier stuff, the Joe Rogan horse paste versus the other medicine. We're still on YouTube, so I can't even say.
The complete and utter lack of objectivity. And they're not even like really trying to hide it. They have no shame about it. Like, it is absolutely not only mind-boggling, but kind of sickening. Like, it's just absolutely ridiculous. Oh, what's up, Bad Tunes? Yeah, we had another late start. Oh, shit. I also had a late notice of your message. I slept in today. I barely got up in time to get the stream going. I had to like rush a shower for like a 3-minute shower before I jumped on stream. Yet, when I did start up the stream, it was about the same exact time Russell was getting his thing going. So I continue to be somewhere around the same time frame as Russell. So I feel like I can't be doing that bad. This man's got a much bigger platform than I am, and his time is about as off as I am on general.
That you can't work for an organization that has its own system of corruption in place. You know, when I was in America, I got involved in a temporary spat with someone that's saying, no, MSNBC and CNN are meaningfully superior to Fox. And is that it? Is that the conversation you want to have now? You don't want to have the conversation about, look, this is really what CNN are involved with. They promoted the debunked narrative that Trump colluded with Russia. They spent months downplaying Hunter Biden's laptop. They got involved in all that Joe Rogan stuff. Let's have a look
at
some
a
genuine
grind.
Systemic corruption.
There's one that I enjoy
some
more than I
meaningful numbers
dislike.
and figures that will not be changed as a result of Fox's payout. Look, the Pentagon spent $14 trillion after 9/11. 55% of it went to for-profit defense contractors. You know that already. You know that they are agitating to increase Pentagon budgets even now, while the Pentagon consistently keeps failing audits. Is that today's video? Or are we doing that another day on Here's the News? There's so much stuff coming today. I think we're talking about robots arresting you robots dressed as dogs arresting you in New York City for your own good, mind. Military contractors have spent $2.5 billion on lobbying over the past 2 decades.
Dogs.
So in a way, while you're saying, like, the claim that's being made is Fox News shouldn't have said the election was rigged. The election isn't rigged. Democracy is fine. But in 2016, when Trump won, the Democrats spent years after saying, oh, it's Russiagate, it's not legitimate. That's what they did. And now subsequent to this election, Trump saying, oh, it's corrupt, these machines, you know, like a variety of, and you at home might think it's rigged. But whether it is rigged or not rigged, it's corrupt anyway. Why would we quibble about the minutiae of the corruption when you can look at numbers like this that tell you in plain sight, indefatigably, what the problem is? The problem is, at the very top of the machine are elite institutions that require war, that require sickness, that require your poverty in order to function. As long as that remains a fact, as long as you cannot vote against that, you are going to live basically in a system that's somewhat like this, because no one's saying, when I get into power, what we're going to do is we're going to ensure that the Pentagon's budgets are in line with necessary expenditure, we don't get involved in unnecessary foreign wars, and we're going to make sure that that money ends up supporting the actual troops that we use as the metaphors and symbols for patriotism, but are willing to end up on the streets, homeless, living on food stamps. We've got stats and data on that stuff if you want it.
Or no one's also saying that, you know, we're going to stop lobbying. You know, we're going to stop government funding through corporations that are basically buying votes in their favor. You know, no one's really saying that we're going to do anything substantial to curb big pharma. Biden sort of kind of did that, but we actually saw how much that actually did. It was mostly just a tiny slap on the wrist, worded in a way that made it look like a big deal. No one's doing anything, and is ever going to do anything in our current system to do any actual substantial change to the foundational issues within the system. Which is why we gotta figure something else out. And at some point, we'll have enough people that agree with this sentiment that we actually will start figuring something out. I'm betting that's gonna happen somewhat soon, like 20 years tops. 20 years tops.
Soon after the Ukraine war broke out last year, Congress voted to appropriate $40 billion of aid in Ukraine. You didn't get to vote for it, but you were propagandized, so you couldn't think straight about it. And that's not to say Russia's invasion isn't criminal, even if they were agitated by NATO expansionism. It's still a criminal invasion. But this $40 billion of aid in Ukraine, do you think that all ended up as like blankets wrapped around little kids in Kiev? Or do you think that Raytheon and Lockheed Martin saw some of that money? Let me know in the chat, let me know in the comments. Every single Democrat voted for it, while 40 Republicans urged Joe Biden to include a 5% increase. Both sides basically the same. And of course, to give you a bit of big picture stuff, billionaires added $5 trillion to their fortunes during the pandemic. How did your business get on? How did your lifestyle improve during that period? Let me know in the comments, let me know in the chat. So essentially, we're having conversations and arguments that are confined to territory that cannot meaningfully affect change. That's the game. It's the only game in town. Pious posturing by career politicians that are basically performers. And here's one of the best. Hillary Clinton sat strapped up in blue, haughtily mmming her way through an interview. She says a lot. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if she's having a particularly delicious boiled sweetie, or if she's on the precipice of some other kind of bodily bliss, but she's saying all the way through it. More than bop. I ain't heard this much since bop. Have a look at her.
America goes to the polls. Donald Trump is running for president while under criminal indictment. This, the man who back in 2016 consistently accused you of law breaking and actively encouraged chants of lock her up directed at you. It's pretty ironic, isn't it, that he is now...
I'll tell you what's also pretty ironic. It's ironic that in their self-described Pied Piper strategy, the Clinton campaign proposed intentionally cultivating extreme right-wing presidential candidates, hoping to turn them into the new mainstream of the Republican Party in order to try to increase Clinton's chance of winning.
Yeah, that is so crazy that we've gotten to the point where not even just... I thought it was bad enough that a main tactic during political discourse was basically just to insult and degrade your opponent rather than present any valid points. Just by making your opponent look bad, you can win. If we're actually concerned about getting the right man in the position, right man or woman, I guess, in the position, it should be solely about the merits of that individual, not the demerits of their opposition. It's honestly just childish, the way it ends up playing out. So that was bad enough, but now it's taking it a step further, and how they're actually propping up the candidates that they think they have the best chance of winning against. They think they have the best chance of stacking demerits on top of to help their case. It's absolutely insane. We are far removed from any type of objective claims of actual legitimate reason for being able to fulfill the position in which they are running for. It's a freaking circus. It's a freaking circus.
campaign and Democratic National Committee called for using far-right candidates as a cudgel to move the more established candidates further to the right. That's ironic. That's real irony. The irony is supporting campaigns that they regard as far-right, then finding themselves overwhelmed by those candidates. That's a good.
Oh, yeah, the fact that that whole thing backfired too
Clinton's camp
makes
insisted
it more
that
of a
Trump and other
circus and makes it funny.
should be elevated to leaders of the pack, and media outlets should be told to take them seriously. You know that the media that decries and attacks Donald Trump are financially dependent on him. That's why they're willing to film hours of his aeroplane on the tarmac while Joe Biden crushes healthcare packages put in place by Trump that they claim they support. It's theatre. In this realm of theatre, Fox's out-of-court settlement is not a victory for democracy. In this theatre, Trump's trading cards are not egregious. They're just another symbol of where we are.
Oof.
Why not do that? Why not have Donald Trump dress up as a
The
rock
1%.
star and treat it
The
like
1%
kind of a
phone
serious
charge, that's
thing
rough,
or a
my
fun
guy.
thing or whatever? Like, we're living in this sort of postmodern,
Can't believe your phone will hold
valueless
1% this long.
expanse now, where anything goes. Nothing has any real meaning. Listen, in a minute we're going to click over to being exclusively
Nothing of
on
substance gets
Rumble,
discussed, is what
talking
you
about a
mean to
story
say,
that I
Russell.
just can't believe is true. It's one of those things we find ourselves reporting over here on Rumble. The possibility that that China were developing a particular medication before that medication would have been needed because there was no such outbreak. I'm being deliberately obtuse at the moment, deliberately cryptic, because I know we are still on YouTube where we would receive strikes for that kind of information. We've got a couple of quotes here that sum up the situation pretty. Scare you, it can snitch on you. Is there anything it can't do? Love you.
Yes, it can really talk, either to people who need help or to the bad guys.
Yeah, people need
Okay,
help.
looks like we have a bit of a gap here. So I am pretty sure I'm as far back as you can get in this Rumble stream. Oh, no, okay. Just didn't want to load it first. I don't know. It's weird. What do we got?
Why not have this? If Jake Tapper can turn up on CNN saying, "You're not going to believe this," Fox claiming to be that has been in mind.
Okay.
This 40-bit
Yeah,
business
we got-
move the more established candidates further, dress up as a rock star and treat it like kind of a serious thing. Or listen, in a minute we're literally on information. It's still precisely the one quotes here that sum up the situation pretty beautifully. This is by
here we go.
Gil
We're good
Deleuze.
now.
Oh yeah, philosophy, is it? The fundamental problem of political philosophy is still precisely the one that Spinoza saw so clearly and that Wilhelm Reich rediscovered. Why do men fight for their servitude as stubbornly as though it were their salvation? Why will we not awaken? Why will we not attack real systemic problems? Let's look at the Edward Said quote as well. Well, not that one. We ain't got time for that, darling. Let's have a look at the shorter one. There's one that's a lot more pithy. Here we go. Every empire, however, tells itself and the world that it is unlike all other empires, that its mission is not to plunder and control,
Appreciate
but
it,
to
bad tunes.
educate
Have a good
and
one, man.
liberate. We'll be talking more about the military-industrial complex and how it requires the unique claim that America is above and beyond all other nations in order to facilitate its ongoing interventionism. That's ultimately a kind of sales tactic. Is it time, Gal? Are we off of YouTube now? Because I'm going to speak freely. I'm going to speak very freely now. But we're not going to be using freely acquired content. Content acquired from young Putin, that's Will Sutter's dad, who is the only person willing to subscribe to The Telegraph. He's got us this story. China began developing 2 COVID vaccines before the official outbreak. Now, let us know, how could they have been doing that? Does that mean that there was an outbreak elsewhere that they knew about? Is there something, excuse me, that's not as nefarious as that headline would suggest? Let me know, because I can't think of it. I can't think of it. Chinese researchers may have begun developing 2 COVID vaccines in November 2019 before the official start of the outbreak. What based on? A hunch? What was it that led them? They had a hunch.
Well, I guess this is the argument. This is the argument, isn't it? That the whole time we've been told, not just by China, but also the United States, certainly initially, although it's been changing that narrative the whole time, that this didn't emerge from the lab. But now you're discovering that if this is true, and they were creating vaccines, in 2019, then obviously, one, it came from a lab, and two, they already knew about it. You know,
They knew
already
about it.
had COVID, so someone in China or people in China had it. So it's potentially a massive thing if this is true.
That's the sort of story that the mainstream media should be covering. Potentially, it's more important than Fox's out-of-court settlement. The claims come
Potentially,
in
I
a
would say
300-page
pretty much
document
guaranteed
which
it is.
concluded that the pandemic most likely came from a lab leak and was the result of a research-related incident in Wuhan. That's a hell of a
Well,
document.
it's a big story because obviously this all relates to the pharmaceutical industry. We know about ways in which the pharmaceutical industry would be damaged if these kind of revelations were to come out. And it's interesting just to kind of go back to the Fox fine, but because one of the things you were talking about was the kind of hypocrisy of CNN making money from Trump. But in terms of fines, and this being the biggest defamation fine in US history, obviously Pfizer, a company who now Biden is literally doing a $5 billion deal on the next generation vaccine with Big Pharma in the US, Pfizer's biggest fine is $2.3 billion for illegally promoting the use of 4 of its drugs. So that obviously far higher than the again, not to kind of in any way say that Fox weren't doing anything wrong. They evidently were. But we're talking about Pfizer, a company that now in the pandemic, people have been getting tattoos of, and people have been lauding Pfizer's achievements, and the people in Pfizer are heroes. And yet we go back a few years and they're paying fines of $2.3 billion. The narrative is very different.
But the thing is, with
Very
the
different.
Fox fines,
Cultivated,
it
you
is
might even
wrong
say.
to broadcast something that you know to be not true, but that's same claim can be leveled to the US government
Of course it
as a
can.
result of these recent revelations. And ultimately, generally, whether or not the election was rigged, whether or not those machines are faulty, if you've got a feeling that your democracy isn't working, it's broadly true in the ways that we demonstrated, because it's bought and paid for by donations and lobbies. People in Congress own stocks and shares in the companies that they're supposed to regulate. The military-industrial complex requires ongoing war. The pharmaceutical industry benefits from sickness, illness, and indeed pandemics that potentially were caused as a result of research that they were undertaking before they even bloody revealed that there was a problem.
And you can't even say this. This is crazy. Like, you're not even allowed to say this. Which is objectively true. Now, whether or not they were affected by the fact, their decision making was affected by this fact, that is debatable. But it is a blatant fact that they benefit from the pandemic. They made boku bucks. This is reported statistical fact. They made insane amounts of money on this vaccine. An all-time record profit. Like, how is that not a benefit? So they did benefit. Okay, even though you can't say that, they did benefit. So then you gotta ask, well, why can't I say that? Why aren't we allowed to talk about that? And if you genuinely ask that question, there's not much more I have to say to you.
And the pharmaceutical industry, just a couple of years before the pandemic, where, as Gareth points out, they were presented to us as heroes and saviors, were making out-of-court settlements of significantly more than that because of drugs that they were illegally, erroneously, malfeasantly promoting. That's as well, without getting into other actors and players in the pharmaceutical space, like the Sackler family and all that Purdue gear and the opioid crisis that was knowingly induced just because it would be profitable. And as it becomes more diffuse and more systemic, the mental health crisis, the despair, even if you're not yet suicidal or on drugs, you might have the feeling that you're living in an unfair system devoid of meaning, where you have no power or traction in your own life, where you're eating food that isn't good for you, where you're consuming information that is untrue, where you're living a lifestyle that's not connected to who you really are. And I don't even mean that in an ideological or philosophical way. I mean that in an anthropological way. You're not living in connection to nature. You're not connected to your inner self. You're living primarily, fundamentally, ultimately in an illusion. So, okay, those voting machines are good. Woohoo, let's all go back to sleep. Everything's fine. It's ridiculous. It's not a victory. You watch how it's presented in the mainstream. It'll be like, what a triumph. The same people that are willing to take Pfizer's advertising dollars, knowing that Pfizer have paid bigger out-of-court settlements than that. So there's your justice, there's your
Exactly
triumphant
that. You know,
system.
it's interesting that obviously all this focus is on lies about elections, this what's going on with Fox at the moment. But what's not being concentrated on is what about lies within terms of government? You know, it's one thing about the election result and, oh, was it real? Or, you know, should it have gone to Trump? Should it have gone to Biden? But the concentration isn't on, all right, what about when either of those actually gets into government and what lies occur with the promises that are made and the promises that are broken, whoever gets into power at the time? Those are the things that we should be focusing on.
And a few examples of that. The Ohio train crash. How did that go down? How was that environmental disaster handled? Where did all the ecological rhetoric go at a time when it would have been relevant and helpful? What about the capping of big pharma prices, handled in a way as to allow pharma to continue to profit and only tokenistic changes made to their pricing models? What about the suggestion that people were going to be released from prison because of cannabis? The whole thing is theatre. So, like, Donald Trump's mad, non-fungible bloody cards in that environment make as much sense as anything else. There's no one in the political sphere on a plinth high enough to talk down to him. That's the problem, in my opinion. All of their haughtiness, all of their condemnation of the kind of people that find Donald Trump's bombast appealing, his attitude on camera, his willingness to plain speak in places where diplomacy governs to the point of duplicity. All of those people, they ain't got a leg to stand on.
I like that, when diplomacy governs to the point of duplicity. What a good phrase. I gotta remember this one. In a place where diplomacy governs to the point of duplicity. Well articulated there, Russell.
Anymore. The facts point to that. The figures demonstrate that. And what I suppose we say speculatively is these are the observable symptoms of a very, very sick system indeed. Remember when Greenwald come on here, Glenn Greenwald, Pulitzer Prize winning conspiracy theorist, married gay man and right-wing Nazi fascist, he said that clearly a decision's been made not to placate the masses, to use a sort of just a pat term anymore, by, you know, the bread and circuses modality. Now they're arming themselves. Now they're surveilling us to within an inch of our lives. They're creating new anti-protest laws. They're watching our every move. They're censoring counter narratives. And just in case that don't work, there are robo dogs out on the street. They've finally come up with a name that makes them sound inoffensive. It's Digidog. That sounds sort of quite nice.
Cute.
The
I
Digidog.
like the sound of a Digidog. I'd
It
get
can
one
be
of those,
dangerous.
But
It's just a
not
Digidog.
actually a dog, though, is it? It's a quadruped cop.
It's a killer robot that stands on 4 legs. That's it. That's all that it is. It is, again, a killer robot, because it is a robot with a lethal gun that shoots real bullets, automatic fire, a lethal robot that stands on 4 legs. There's nothing dog-like about it other than the fact that it has 4 legs. It is just as much a dog as a crocodile is a dog. Actually, it is less a dog than a crocodile is a dog because it's not alive. It's a killer robot.
Yeah.
It's a quadruped fascist cop. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't have an ideology, actually, does it? It's just some programming.
Unless AI gets involved.
Uh-oh. Then what? What if AI starts, I don't know, using Wi-Fi to start manipulating their digidogs? So many questions, so few answers. But what I love about this story is the way that the New York officials present this information as inevitable, as progress, as good for you, as a safety measure, rather than admitting that what it could potentially be viewed as is a safeguard for an inevitable future of public unrest and protest and uprising, preventing the possibility that human law enforcement officers might not be willing to shoot their own. Digidog don't have that problem, and Digidog is coming to you in New York, New York. So good, they named it, governed it, and tyrannized it twice. Here's the news.
Jesus.
No, here's the effing news.
Thank you for choosing Fox News.
No, here's the
No, here's the fucking
It's
news.
official. New York are bringing in robo-cops in order to police the population as protests become more likely. But the smart thing they've done is to persuade us that these things are actually cute little digi-dogs.
Cute little
As the world
digidogs.
becomes more corrupt, as the media becomes more hypocritical, as protests become more likely, the establishment is finding ingenious new ways of policing us with terrifying, aggressive robots, which are sort of posing as cute, lovable robo-dogs.
Robots will now take their place beside the city's men and women in blue.
CBS 2 political reporter Marsha Kramer shows us the mayor says he is combing the world for the latest technology to put the NYPD at the forefront of fighting crime.
Forefront, progressive. They're making this look like natural progress. For a little while, they've been trying to normalize those robots. They're getting us used to the idea that not only is uniformed authority able to tell us what to do, or bureaucratic information through your phone or through your letterbox or whatever, but now cyber authority is being introduced. Look at the way that the media tells you that this is not the intervention of centralized power introducing new ways to control you should you find yourself interested in challenging authority. No, this is progress. New York's always been at the vanguard. It's the greatest city in the world. Why shouldn't we be oppressing you in new and novel ways? This is
New
being
and
sold
novel
to
ways
you
of
as an
oppression, baby.
advance, as progress. We've already
Brought to you, by you, for you.
been softened up and pummeled into thinking we need this stuff. You have to be terrified to accept the way that we are governed generally. You have to believe that there are enormous threats, whether it's terrorist threat or germ threat or Russia threat. If you think that basically human beings are like you and there's a bit of good in the worst of us and a bit of bad in the best of us and we all muddle along and we can probably organize our own communities, then there's no need for them to put robot dogs on the street, cream profits off everything, set up an infrastructure where democracy is a kind of charade, where corporate and financial elites secretly run everything, not so secretly these days even. Look at the framing of this.
Pretty
It's
in your
important
face these
that you're
days.
told, great news everyone, there's robot dogs on the street. Of course they're going to say initially there's no plans for them to be armed, we're never going to arm them. Yeah, of course they're going to say that. Then there'll be some other crisis because they've already made us believe it's a good thing to have robo dog out there. And it, by the way, is not a dog, is it? Like when you think of the attributes of a dog, loyal, friendly. Dogs wouldn't have caught on as man's best friend if they were aggressive policing bastards. From our earliest days, dogs would come by the campfire, or wolves as they were then, and they'd come there and they'd police us. Hey, what are you doing? How did you cook that antelope? Mind your own fucking business, you little bastard.
From a galaxy far away, or at least Times Square, the NYPD enters the 21st century with crime-fighting robots to patrol subway stations or the crossroads of the world.
They're all about the future.
Crime fighting. That's what we're calling it now. They're crime fighting robots. I mean, I get that they're police robots. And so, yes, ostensibly, they're there to stop crime. But crime fighting, like we use that's a term we use for superheroes. We don't call the police crime fighters. We call them police. But police has a less overarchingly positive connotation to it than crime fighting. Again, complete lack of objectivity. A clear agenda in the within the words they decide to use to present the information.
Star Wars, making it innocuous, banal, even fun. Oh wow, it's just like R2-D2. No, it's not like R2-D2. It's like the Empire. It's like you're being controlled undemocratically by centralized force. Who do you think those robots are going to work for in the event that there are massive uprisings? Do you know what's happening? It's like, hey, you know what the problem is with the military and the police force? Those people are drawn from ordinary blue-collar communities. So when it comes to it, they might think, hey, I'm not willing to shoot my children and my grandma. Robo-dog don't have that problem. Hey, didn't I throw you a robo-bone yesterday? Does not compute.
Yeah.
Not
That's exactly what you should be terrified of. It's exactly what you should be terrified of. And terror is the only appropriate response to something like this. Yet it is not the response that we're likely to get. Crazily enough.
Not only does this robot sound an alarm, but it can also send messages.
Oh, great. It can scare you. It can snitch on you. Is there anything it can't do? Love you.
Yes, it can really talk, either to people who need help or to the bad guys.
Yeah, people need help. Oh, excuse me, I need some help. I was a bit free. I was doing what I wanted. Comply! Comply! And who are those bad guys? Are the bad guys whoever the state appoints that day to be bad? Or is it the people that are releasing killer robots onto your streets?
And a robotic device called a DigiDog, which is designed to assist the NYPD in investigating high-risk or hazardous incidents.
We want the public to know that the use of these technologies will be transparent, consistent, and always done in collaboration with the people that we serve.
Just the way things have been up till now, really. Always been pretty transparent. Always a general feeling of service. The culture sets up, I think, fake arguments that we're progressing because of these technological advances. But let's not ignore the fact that what she's telling us is robot dogs are coming to police you. Why? For what reason? The most innocuous reason is it saves money because it means that a normal person can't make pay demands to fulfill that role. But at worst, it's that dog will do whatever it's programmed to do without a human conscience. That's what it's about.
No
That's the long
human
game
conscience
here. That's not
needed.
cynical conspiracy theory. Is it a conspiracy theory there was a massive wealth transfer in the last couple of years? Is it a cynical conspiracy theory that the police are being militarized all across America and much of the world? Is it a conspiracy theory that new protest laws are being introduced everywhere? Is it a conspiracy theory that the ability to surveil ordinary people, whether they've committed a crime or not, is increasing across the world? Oh wow, all these conspiracy theories come together to make one big, not a conspiracy theory and nothing to worry about, and just a dog trotting down your street shooting people.
The commissioner responding to intense community backlash the first time the NYPD tried to use the futuristic DigiDog during the de Blasio administration. Some described it as a manifestation of overly aggressive police tactics used in poor communities.
Hey, this is a manifestation of overly aggressive police tactics.
That's
what
a good
about now,
response.
a couple of years later? Oh no, this is the forefront of progress now.
I believe that technology is here. We cannot be afraid of it.
Yes, we can. We can be afraid of it. Are you aware of what's going on with AI? Are you aware of how much power these things are accumulating and generating, and the possibility that it's attuned to forces and powers that we will never ever be able to confront? You can tell in everything they're saying that they're trying to sort of covertly address the real problem. Look, I know what this looks like. It looks like we're putting robot dogs into the street, which will lose normal cops their jobs and prevent there being human connection between those that are being policed and the police force. Also enabling more surveillance, more power to big tech, who you know you cannot trust already. I know it looks like that, but
Concisely
we can't
put,
be
Russell.
afraid of technology. Can't we? Can't we? Because, hold on,
I think
I'm trying to describe myself.
I think a little healthy skepticism and even a little healthy fear is appropriate, for sure. But you know, I'm just an anime dude on the internet, so what the fuck do I know?
A number of groups attacked the city's latest foray into the 21st century, including Communities United.
Latest foray. So like this is a foregone conclusion. Like this is just the direction that we obviously are going to go. Like there's no debate on whether or not this will be the direction we go. That it is your parents telling you what the fuck is going to happen, and you should have to accept it. Again, our government acts as a parental figure rather than government servants, is what they're supposed to be.
For police reform, which said, quote, "We need to invest in housing, education, mental health care, and community programs that will keep us safe, not investment in new and expensive technologies to criminalize us further."
Yes, absolutely.
That is the argument in a paragraph. They're aware of that argument, and they've made that decision. We could either give them better housing, mental health care, fairer, less unequal societies, or we could take even more.
So that's literally 100% correct. Like they got everything right. Didn't miss a beat. Housing, healthcare, better access to healthy food. I guess they could have put that in there. But yeah, they hit pretty much most of the most important wickets.
more money and shoot those motherfuckers with robot dogs. Oh, yeah, no, the robot dogs.
If we were not willing to move forward and use technology on how to properly keep cities safe.
Forward is a concept, by the way. It's not like there's linear time, like, oh, we gotta keep going with time. Like, where's it go? What's happening? Do you think things are improving? Like, I know people are telling, oh, the average person doesn't live on $1 a day, and back in medieval times, you had to suck on a chicken's ass to get through the afternoon. I'm aware of all of that stuff, but what I'm also aware of is a militarizing, tyrannizing, centralizing state. And we're being told that it is transparent and progressive at gunpoint.
Then you will not keep up with those who are doing harmful things to hurt New Yorkers.
That's not true, is it? There's not armies of like really progressive technological gangsters. Okay, look at what we got now. We're running these protection rackets. Also, we got this fucking terrifying little gangster robot. Give me 10% of your income as I shoot you down. Are you laughing at me like I'm a clown? There's not robot Goodfellas out there. The forces of evil and the forces of crime are not invested in technology. Look at the framing we have to accept. That the state is there to protect you. It is not. Technology is inherently a good thing. It is not. Progress means more technology. It does not. There is no
Technology is not inherently good nor evil. Technology is a tool that presents opportunity to do great good or great evil.
many things that we accept, that there aren't different ways to improve communities, that there aren't massive conversations to be had about how communities are run. All of this is being bypassed essentially by a shiny robot. And then people are so terrified and sort of bludgeoned with stupidity that they'll probably applaud that fucking thing and give it a parade. New York City Mayor Eric Adams and the NYPD have reintroduced the DigiDog. I'm not going to call it a dog, it's a robot policeman. It's not even a robot policeman, it's a cyborg, it's a law cyborg, it's a law force cyborg.
It is a killing machine.
$74,000 robot that resembles a dog, except in the traits of loyalty, kindness, friendliness, and warmth, which was paused by the previous mayor. Whoa, we better pause this. People fucking hate it. It was retired after civil rights advocates also deemed it aggressive policing. That's why, because people went, hold on a minute, these robots coming into people's houses, is this right? Oh shit, no, they've noticed. No, yeah, we'll stop that for a couple of years till you're poorer and more desperate. A few loud people were opposed to it, and we took a step back. That is not how I operate, Mayor Adams said at a press briefing. Loud people? That's protesters. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, just loud people opposed to tyranny. They seem to be quiet now, since we shot him. Bring on the cyborg dog! NBC New York notes that the robot's use is being pushed through despite widespread public objections. People don't want it. People do not want RoboCop on the street. Perhaps because they've seen the film RoboCop. This announcement is another example of the NYPD's violation of basic norms of transparency and accountability by rolling out these technologies without providing the public a meaningful opportunity to raise concerns, the Legal Aid Society is quoted as saying, in objection to the move. We've been through defund the police, we've been through the hatred of the police, now we're saying it's progress to turn the police into robots. Another piece of tech called the K5 autonomous security robot is also being rolled out alongside the quadrupedal robot, which NBC New York reports uses artificial intelligence to provide incident notification in real time to first responders. That's surveillance. Surveillance robots on the streets watching you and then grassing you up to the authorities. You know, because you're a criminal or maybe you're just doing something that the state objects to. And will be used to conduct automated patrol in confined areas both indoors and outdoors, such as transit stations. Every objection to police militarization as a dangerous slippery slope has been 100% vindicated by history. And there's no reason to expect that to change as they start rolling out cop bots. As John and Nisha Whitehead explained last year for the Rutherford Institute, this ongoing expansion of police robot militarization tracks alongside the steadily increasing militarization of police forces in the US more generally. SWAT teams first appeared in California in the 1960s. By 1980, the US was seeing 3,000 SWAT team style raids per year, and by 2014 that number had soared to 80,000. It's probably higher.
I have to step away for a second. I'll be back in like 60 seconds.
now.
Okay,
In
back.
order to continue to fund the cyborg dog cop, they will have to demonstrate that it's valuable and therefore show that it's being used in arrests and, oh, this neighborhood's 10% more successful or whatever. So once they introduce it, it never goes backwards. Since the dawn of history, rulers have dreamed of having mindless, obedient soldiers who will never turn against them, will never disobey orders, and will never hesitate to attack the civilians of their own country when told to do so. Cop bots are the final solution to the ancient problem that there are always a whole lot more ordinary people than there are rulers.
Yep. Sci-fi's been addressing this for decades now. Shit, I mean, like we're approaching a century of sci-fi movies having been addressing this very thing. And we've seen how it played out every time. And you might argue and say, well, those are just movies. Those are movies based, whose very basic principles, very basic ideas come from not a combination of logic and understanding of human nature. That's why stories appeal to us, is because they are reflective of human nature. Somehow we will fail to see just how much we need to put a stop to this before it's too late, though. I'm sure things will have to get very bad before the proper public response comes out to this, unfortunately. But such is life, I suppose. Such is life.
Because once they're fully militarized and fully rolled out, they can be used to subdue a population of any size. Cop bots are the anti-guillotine. When there are these uprisings in France and Sri Lanka, in the Netherlands, in the US, when people are less and less satisfied with their government, more and more cynicism about inequality, about corruption in media and government, you could either create a fair and more just democratic society, or you could send robots with guns out onto the street. What do you think's more likely given this news story? Let me know in the chat and the comments. Now the Oakland Police Department is pushing for the use of robots armed with shotguns. Police have already used a robot armed with a bomb to kill a suspect in Texas. Like all
Whoa,
escalations
I need to look into
in
that
police
story.
powers and police
They used a robot bomb to kill somebody in Texas? Ooh, the line has already been crossed. And I'm sure there was a lot of justification in that one circumstance. But that's how it always starts. You have the most gray zone you possibly can to cross the threshold is used to justify the crossing of a threshold that should not be crossed. Making killer robots is a line that should never be crossed. At least in my opinion.
Police militarization, the increasingly widespread use of police kill bots will be justified in the name of saving lives and protecting law enforcement officers, but we'll certainly see a rise in abuses of the new power. More importantly, at least in the long term, once armed robots are being used to police civilian populations, the powerful will have made the possibility of a people's revolution against them far more remote. So democracy doesn't work, protest doesn't work, surveillance is now possible, omni-surveillance almost, and now we have an armed police force of killer robot dogs. What's the way out now? How are you going to vote your way out of this one? Flesh and blood armed police will hesitate.
There's more centralizing of power. Less people that you need to support a central power, the more central the power actually is. This is what that is. This is a major move in that direction.
To fire upon their countrymen in a domestic uprising, they can be persuaded to side with the people and oust the sitting government. They have beating hearts and aren't covered in armor. AI-guided weapons robots are not yet enforcing the rule of law in our streets, but that does appear to be where we're headed. And once we're there, it's entirely possible that the door to revolution will have been bolted shut for good. If that's the case, then it's no exaggeration to say that humanity is in a race between A, a revolution against the status quo power structures which are oppressing and exploiting us while driving us towards disaster, and B, the ubiquity of armed police units. Our rulers keep incrementally pacing us into accepting this in the same way they pace us into accepting internet censorship, whistleblower persecution, and the war on journalism.
Yeah, those are all areas in which I spoke loudly against. And sadly, had to watch us lose ground on. The internet censorship one is one I thought we were gonna actually stand strong on too, man. We made a couple really strong stances. I was very much a part of and closely following. I was very heartened, emboldened, inspired by the veracity of which we argued against internet censorship. But unfortunately nowadays we're begging for it. We're begging all these platforms to censor people and stop them from fucking saying things that we don't want to hear and doing things that we don't want to see. We've invited the fact checkers in. And soon freedom of speech will be dead. But again, just the opinion of one anime dude online.
And you can think of examples of each of those. Whistleblowers who reveal information being smeared and dissenting voices being controlled, surveillance being increased, police being militarized, new protest laws, totally immersive surveillance. All of these things are on the rise. Even if you happen to agree with the government in your country now, and I bet you don't, let me know in the chat and the comments, surely you see now that this creates the possibility for a corrupt, centralized dictatorship to take total control of your country and ultimately the world. We have to oppose measures like this while they're small enough to be crushed. Otherwise, we may never get the chance again. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments in the chat. I'll see you in a second.
No, here's the fucking news.
Lane W's views. Election was rigged. It was obvious. This is all theatre. See, some people, that's the way they are. Like Lane W believes that, look at this, Bob 303. The whole system is rigged against the average citizen. Jack 29, and nothing says these voting machines are good. They settled out of court. We will never know. It should have gone to fact-finding. See, people don't, they go. Look, but also on you see the presentation we just made. Mystic Kipper says, clip-clops in flip-flops. That would soften the image. You're right about that, Mystic Kipper. Blessed old bird, these are tools. This is what happens when someone hacks into the system. Or what happens? Let me just work that out. Yeah, what happens when they do? We don't know yet, mate. But it won't be good, I don't imagine. Neon Grammarian. How does Clip-Clop do when it's caught in a bear trap or falls into a camouflaged hole? Well done. The counter Clip-Clop movement's begun, and it begun here. We have got a fantastic guest joining us right now, a person that I have met and been on a TV program with and sat on an armchair under bright lights, looking at for a moment, having those sort of powerful moments of reflection that I often have when I'm on a television show where I start thinking about God and death and meaning.
And Greg Gutfeld.
And Greg Gutfeld, because it was his show, so I thought about him a bit. I looked at him, wondered what he was like. Sometimes I think about everyone's kidneys and everything, doing their jobs, think about all the cells regenerating, think about that we're in limitless space, and then think, oh no, I'm being asked a question.
And he's got a bright jumper on.
Yeah, it's very bright. But the guest was, I remember thinking that alongside the Thanos-like wrestler man, who I liked and was funny and made a couple of good jokes, and he seemed like a pretty nice guy, actually, the person I liked who was opposite from me was Kat Timpf, whose book I hold in my hand now, You Can't Joke About That, which pictures her holding some booze and a microphone in a studded shoe, sat atop of, I believe, a coffin. And me and Kat Timpf are going to have a conversation now and talk about, I suppose, hate speech. Also, Kat, I met Kat on Fox, so we've got to talk about what's going on Fox and all that stuff. Kat, are you there, mate? Are you there on the internet with us?
Yes, I am. Hello.
It's lovely to see you.
So great to see you too.
Do you remember that time when we met each other and it was on Greg Gutfeld?
Yes, we did. We had some great conversations about binary thinking and the way that people in power like to play us against each other so that we don't pay attention to how corrupt things are getting and the way they're abusing their power. And I've loved a lot of things that you've said, sort of continuing in that exact direction.
Yeah, like I'm starting to find, like, I'm having conversations with people that I've been trained to be suspicious of. They're delightful, delightful, friendly and open. And not you necessarily. I don't even know if you are a right-wing person. I can't tell. I've been looking at your book. It seems to me that you're very interested in freedom and conversation and humor and fun Tell me, mate. Well, this book is the driving idea behind your book that ongoing censorship will ultimately be deleterious because we won't be able to muck about and have fun.
That's part of it, right? And I'm a libertarian, so I'm not in either
Oh,
one of the two
libertarian,
big
huh?
teams. The point of the book is all the things that we're not supposed to talk about, the things that we're not supposed to joke about, how harmful that is to the people who are actually going through tough things. If you're going through trauma, you don't want to be treated weird by people who are too afraid to speak to you and maybe say the wrong thing. And that applies to so many different things because ultimately we're all in this together. And the only way that we're actually going to be able to survive is being able to openly communicate with each other about everything, including political stuff and the stuff you shouldn't say, but also stuff like death, which is why I'm sitting on a coffin on my book cover.
That's why you're sitting on that coffin.
Yes, absolutely. I think that a lot of the debate is always about speech versus sensitivity, right? But that really ignores the way that it can bring us together because every tough thing I've ever been through, one thing that got me through it was thinking, okay, well, I'm at least building a connection with everyone else who's been through it too, whether it was losing my mom at a young age, being very, very broke starting out, or I had an emergency ostomy surgery in 2020. Then I had a reversal where I had some complications and I was in the hospital actually on January 6th. But what's the use if we can't talk about all of that stuff? So we're actually limiting our ability to connect with each other and also to heal within ourselves, because if something is really scary, then the best way to take away the power from that thing is to laugh in the face of it.
I saw Jon Stewart make a point like that, talking about some of the stuff that Kanye said, and it was one of the things I've most enjoyed, that really we get opportunity.
I feel like that's a double-edged sword, laughing in the face of what makes you afraid. Because on the one hand, it does help you escape the grip of fear. And as long as you're gripped by fear, you're going to be controlled by it. But at the same time, I feel like a big issue that's going on in the world right now is that there are things happening with the government and with global or national politics that do scare people, and they do their best to ignore it. I think laughing is to some extent a method for ignoring, and we don't want to ignore. We need to address these problems. So I feel like you have to utilize that advice in a certain dosage.
For conversation, although I suppose not everyone likes to talk about sensitive or traumatic issues, and I suppose really, Kat, we want to foster a situation where you're not afraid to speak about stuff, but neither are you afraid to be private. It's this odd situation where public speech is being censored while simultaneously we're being surveilled and observed, criminalized, and treated as people that need to be paternally handled and controlled. So it's an interesting time to be an outspoken person. You go on Fox and stuff, mate. What do you find it like on there? Do you like? I mean, I had a really good experience when I went on both Tucker and on Greg Gutfield. Tell me what it's like for you, how you started going on there, and then tell us a bit about what you think about the out-of-court settlement and stuff, if you're comfortable talking about that and it doesn't put you in a compromising legal situation.
Right. Well, I think this kind of goes back to a lot of the stuff you were saying because, I work on Fox News, but I work on the late night show. So I wasn't covering the 2020 election. But if you hear Fox News, you think it's a monolith, right? People say Kat Tim Fox News, and then they think in their head, okay, I now know everything that I need to know about this person, to the point where there's some people who won't even sit down and have a conversation with me. They know nothing about me. They know nothing about my life. And I even saw that happen to you when you were a guest on Fox News, and all of the things you were saying were about this binary thinking and, the power systems. And people said, oh, you went on Fox News, so now Russell Brand is a far right-wing person. But that's how people in power maintain their power and grow their power, because we're so focused arguing back.
By keeping you boxed in and keeping you in a situation where you refuse to think about things from any angle other than the prescribed angle. As long as you're in your little mental box, then you can never really think for yourself. And that is exactly how you become controlled in all aspects of your life. It is a sad truth.
Back and forth with each other. The place where I work doesn't say everything that there is to say about me. And I think that that is very rarely the case. And that keeps people from actually understanding each other or from noticing what's going on from the people in power who are just growing their power. They're watching us. We find they say, we're not watching you, that we find out. And they were like, oh, but look at what this other side did. I picked this team. So, but what this other side did was worse.
Yeah, there's a real like pettiness and vanity in it.
People also don't want to be wrong. When they want to make a strong stance, feel like they're standing in the right place, and they don't want anything or anyone to convince them that they were wrong in that stance, because then they have to readdress and think more deeply, which is often a painful experience. And I don't say that in a a derogatory condescending way. I mean, it legitimately is. Like, it's been difficult for me many times in my life to readdress assumptions I've made about the way things are. It's created a lot of internal turmoil and suffering that I would prefer to have not have gone through, but ultimately that is a far preferable difficulty to face as opposed to staying ignorant, staying unaware of your reality, because that only leads to far greater degrees of suffering in the long run, unfortunately.
Like I think Greg Gutfield said when I was on there, like, of me, Russell Brand don't like Fox News either, and the criticisms leveled at MSNBC and CNN are also being leveled at Fox. But I suppose what I've found particularly troubling of late is the narcissism and the idea that CNN or MSNBC are meaningfully superior to a more conservative, Republican or right-wing, however you want to describe it, outlet like Fox, that they aren't funded in ways that's compromising, that they don't have a relationship with the government that's compromising. These recent leaks, Pentagon papers, Part 2, show that people aren't willing to focus on the content of the papers, instead focusing on the personality of the kid that made the revelations.
Which is ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
And it's even worse because this isn't new. And then there's also the Afghanistan papers. I mean, it's all built into the system that if you go to, I mean, my husband, he fought in Afghanistan, and he said when he was 10 years ago, he said, when I was there, I knew that what they were telling us, or telling, us, meaning the world, that they were trying to do, that was never going to be possible. But by telling people in power what they wanted to hear, oh, it's going great, that's how you get away with it. These people get promoted. A lot of the same people that were involved in that, and certainly the same systems, are doing all of this. And you focus on the leaker. The leaker did this wrong, and not the fact that we've all been lied to. And I was suspicious of this the entire time because I'm awake. And just like you were not a patriot if you question some of the stuff in the Middle East, if you question Ukraine, then you're a Putin puppet, right? The more that they tell you can question something, the more
you
that
should question it, for sure.
I better look into this. I bet that I'm being lied to. And then again, it's they do that to shut you up. And that's why in my book, so much talk about communication and questioning things. And you have to think for yourself. It is much easier to just say, oh, this is my side, because then all the thinking is done for you. And no matter what you do, you'll have people on your side to back you up and point out how the other side is so much worse. But the military industrial complex lives on throughout that.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Cat Timph.
It does. It's sick, and it costs lives. But people make money, and we're all just sitting there like, oh, did you hear about that guy broke that law, or what that person said, or that team is bad? And I'm like, is anybody else paying attention to this?
Well, yeah, we're paying close attention to it. And what we're observing is that most of the stories that we cover are about how state regulation usually improves corporate interest's ability to act upon their agenda, that the media, generally speaking, highlight issues that are difficult to resolve and could easily be brought to some kind of conclusion by an acceptance of mutual tolerance and leaving one another alone and letting people be different. That there's a sort of an appetite to empower globalist centralized authorities like the WHO. I mean, we see it again and again. Militarization of the police force. A kind of what it feels like is the enhancement of centralized authority when what is required is the decentralization of power and the acceptance that there are a lot of different ways of being human. Are you doing this interview on a laptop?
I sure am.
Why don't you
I sure
roam around your house and show us stuff?
Oh, this is my office.
Give us a tour of the property.
Oh, this is my office, so this is it.
You're out.
All my stuff is on the couch here, and I have my wigs over there for my sketches that I do. I'm just sitting in my office.
You do sketches? I'm intrigued.
But, you know, again, I just want to add, too, that, you know, people who are working in government, you know, we pay their salary, and they're supposed to be servants. So, obviously,
Thank you. Thank you. I was saying this earlier. Government servants. That's what they're actual fucking supposed to be. Government servants. Not your fucking daddy. Not your overlord. Not your fucking damn unquestioning leader. Your fucking public servant. And yet, they condescend to you and treat you like children. When is it going to stop? When? Because it needs to. It needs to stop. But you know, it'll take time to get there. It's going to take time. And fortunately, I'm not positive about how much time we really have.
they get rich doing this, which should just tell you all that you need to know also. You go in as a politician and you become super wealthy.
Maybe not all you need to know, but it does tell you plenty that you should be concerned about and paying attention to.
And again, we all allow this to happen and we don't ask any questions. We all need to talk more and listen to each other more and not just say, okay, I think that I know what this person is because of this or that affiliation or in this team and that team, because it's just getting worse every day and they keep getting away with it and nobody seems to care.
Who do you want to read a bit of your book? You, me, or Gareth?
Whoever could go for it. You got it open.
No one wants to hear you whine unless you're funny. If you were alive during the spring of 2020, your spring was probably pretty rough. If you weren't alive, then you're either a baby genius or a spirit from the underworld. In either case, please reach out to me. I have questions. You know, if you're a spirit of the underworld. Even if you didn't have any of the real problems associated with the COVID pandemic, like someone close to you dying, losing your job or your business, or having to spend all of your time at home with your children, I like that, it still probably really, really sucked. All of life's simple joys were suddenly either illegal or impossible, especially in cities like New York. Want to go out to dinner? Too bad, that's illegal. Want to go outside and feel some fresh air on your face? Some dickhead is going to scream at you to put a mask on. It was terrible. I can't even imagine how club girls felt. I mean, where are they supposed to wear their bandage dresses and heels now? Yeah, where are they? This is just an extract from Kat Timp's book in which she sacrilegiously perches upon a wooden esophagus and waits for this general attitude around humour to radically alter. Kat, thanks for coming on this show and talking to us.
Oh, it's been such a pleasure. It's always great talking to you.
Why you got wigs in your office?
Because I've done Elizabeth Warren and Jen Psaki impressions, and then I have this other wig from another impression here.
What's
here
that
is
one
a
from?
participation trophy from 1996 when I played AYSO soccer. You know, I got it all going on. But
Alf's over there. Alf, alien life
yes.
form. He's there.
Yes, I've had that since I was a little girl.
Nice. Keep Alf around. He was all right.
Yeah,
I had Alf doll, and
absolutely.
even though I never
Absolutely. I
actually watched Alf.
a lot of Elf to help get me through a breakup. I think comedy is super healing. I consider comedy to be actually my religion. I hope one day to believe in God
From a
again, but it's
doll,
so
stuffed
healing,
animal.
and I think it's so
Same
important
thing.
when everything else is
Whatever.
so sad and disgusting going on around us to be able to speak the way we want to about it.
Yeah, sometimes I get so serious on the show because we're analysing things that seem really important. You have to hold all of this dense information. You have to be careful that you're not doing the things you're being accused.
A lot of it is very disheartening too. It's not often happy news. A little bit of levity goes a long way in dealing with content such as this.
Of by your detractors of like.
I wish I was a bit better at levity. Unfortunately, it only comes out when I'm thoroughly engaged in discourse. And most of the time when I'm streaming, I don't have a lot of discourse going on. That's why I'll be really excited to have a little bit more of an active chat. People to actually go back and forth with. That'll be really cool. It'll happen one of these days, I think. It's been a fun ride so far anyway. I'm enjoying it. But I digress.
Oh no, am we supporting conspiracy theories? Are we being irresponsible? But generally, we are able to maintain the line by talking to experts and a variety of people. Every so often, though, I feel like, oh man, I just need to stop taking life so seriously. I've been doing that lately. I've just fallen backwards into total frivolity.
Well, I don't think that's falling backwards, right? I think that people like to laugh too. So if you can make people laugh, you can also get them to listen to you a little bit, because I think people get sick of the news being so depressing, but also at least, you're not afraid to question things, which I think is super important.
Kat Timpf, thanks for coming on our show. Get Kat Timpf's book. You can't joke about that. It's out now. We'll put a link in the chat so that you can get it easily. Thanks for joining us, Kat. We'll see you again soon, I hope.
Yes, me too.
Yeah, mate. Hey, guess who's on the show tomorrow? Branko Marcetic. She's going to be on. You love him, don't you?
Yeah, I think he's a very good journalist, yeah.
Don't try and make it a professional love.
I'll try to make
it
it
isn't anything other than
It's
that.
nothing but professional admiration.
I haven't met him.
You've seen him
One
online.
day, that'd be nice. One day, yeah, that'd be nice.
What do you think he'll come in here in person?
Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, he's on tomorrow, so
That's good then.
Hopefully you can nurture your connection to him.
Yes, yep.
I don't want you to sit there through the interview just quietly harbouring a resentment because I'm controlling the chat.
I mean, that's possible. I may do that.
I want you at some point during it to...
Oh shit, what's the word I'm looking for? I reserve the right to take that stance.
Interject passionately and just say, Branko!
Well, I'm not...
Yeah, I feel like this has been a very quick stream. Yeah, we are not taking as much time with this one as we often do. I guess I've been a bit quieter. I did start off pretty tired at the beginning of this. So I feel like I was quieter in the beginning of the show, for sure, if nothing else.
I'll have to read the room, Russell.
Yeah, don't do it if it doesn't seem right.
No.
Also, we're talking about this poor US military lad who foolishly filled in a spoof form to become an assassin. That's not how you become an assassin, is it? By filling in forms?
Who knows?
Who knows?
How do you become one?
I don't know. You've got to get in with the right crowd, the assassin crowd, I suppose. Let us know in the chat if you know how to become one. Anyway, this poor lad's become a bit of a patsy and the object of mainstream
ideas I think are probably
but really, the
legitimate
story,
ways,
I believe,
but I don't
when
think I
someone from the
want
military
to
is
share that.
willing to become a spoof assassin is, why aren't they earning enough from their proper job being in the military? And what is the real story of criminality and corruption? Is it military-industrial complex expenditure, or is it one lad photographing himself in front of a mirror with some snacks behind him, a bit like that other lad, Buddy Texera, whistleblower, gamer, OG, revealer of the simple fact that we've been lied to about the Ukraine-Russia conflict? We'll also be talking to you about a potential cure for long COVID. Yeah, you can sniff your way back to full health. It seems ridiculous, but a lot of things are ridiculous these days. Remember, you can click the red button to join our locals community where you get access to weekly podcast recordings. You can join us live and ask questions. Me and Gareth do Q&A sometimes. Plus, I do these weekly meditations where I do a bespoke meditation for someone based on what they're going through. Like someone's got to make a...
Hold on. You know what it's time for, boys? We haven't done it in a while. But it's time for gaming. say that thinking I'm going to do a quick transition, and then it's not a quick transition. God damn it. Ta-da! Alright. We doing some more AoE grinding today. We will keep reacting to stuff. But we're not done just because the news is about over. We're not done. But I do need some more engagement. Some more things to stimulate my brain. So, we're going to grind at the same time. Plus, I'm going to be honest with you, I just kind of need to get some grinding done. I need money. I need online fake game money. Wait, did I just get got a recipe? Nice. Alright, let's get the news running so we can finish this out.
Tough decision. Someone's got their heart broken. Anything. I also want to let you know that in the middle of July, we are doing a community festival. Wim Hof, the Ice Shaman, will be there. Vandana Shiva, World Teacher, will be there. Hiron Gracie, BJJ Expert, will be there. Eddie Stern, there's Satish Kumar. It's going to be a fantastic event, and you can come. Callie Means is even coming with his sister as well, because apparently she inspired him to get into all this stuff. I've not learned a lot about her yet, but it's going to be a fantastic educational community event. You will meet me, you will meet Wim Hof, you'll have the time of your life. There's a link in the description to get your tickets. Anyway, I suppose tomorrow is our last show of the week. It's going to be absolutely fantastic. Branko Marcher Teacher will be there. Will Gareth finally declare his affection, reveal his erection, bring about an insurrection. Who will know until tomorrow? Join us then, not for more of the same, but for more of the different. Until then, stay free.
Hell yeah. Love that catchphrase. Oh damn it. I forgot that. I see. Those fuck up my VODs. That music apparently is copyrighted. I get copyright fucking claims on my fucking VODs over having that freaking music play. It's very annoying, as a matter of fact. Well, I don't know if we're going to be able to get all the way into the next video. All the way through it. But we're going to get a good ways into it. We've got plenty more time on this stream today. Let me, Is my music playing right now? It is. Stop doing that. You're not supposed to play while I'm in meme mode, which is what I've called when I have videos playing while I'm gaming. Oh, I just had like the fucking biggest sneeze. Felt like my brain matter just came out my nose. Jesus. Ugh. Okay. Allow me to get this video set up, and we'll continue. Oh. Actually, I guess I forgot about this video. Okay, we're gonna watch this video. We got a little more Russell Brand. I was gonna do something un-Russell Brand related, but I forgot that I wanted to go through this video today. So that's what we shall do. That is what we shall do. Give me a moment here. All right. This video is entitled Fox News to pay what? The end of democracy? Let's check it out. Really wish I had a third monitor. Jeez. There's a lot of dead space in this video. What the hell?
Rumble, the first 10-15 minutes we put up in all sorts of places, but now because Fox making those claims on air while privately they exchanged texts saying that they didn't believe them themselves, which by the way sounds very similar to the American government's official stance on the Ukraine-Russia conflict, publicly saying this is a winnable war, go Ukraine, private round the back, we ain't getting none of that.
Oh no, this is the one from today. This is just the cut from the day. Damn, bro. Thought this was another video that I had lined up. I do have a video lined up for Russell. Interesting. Well, now I gotta go back to the drawing board and try to find this damn thing again. I guess. Let me play some music for you guys while you wait. Gotta figure this out. Okay, well, I can't find the Russell Brand video. I thought I had to pull it up somewhere, but I don't know. I don't know what happened with that one. I don't know what happened with that one. So, I guess instead we'll go to the other video I was thinking of. Alright, this one's called, this is a Jordan Peterson video, called Tyranny Through Weaponized Bureaucracy.
You should accept yourself.
Oh shit, it's a bit loud though. So I'll turn that down a bit.
Just the way you are. What does that say about who I should become? Is that just now off the table because I'm already good enough?
I think that's a good volume.
So am I done or something? Get the hell up. Get
The
your act
intro's louder
together.
than like the rest of the
Adopt
video.
some responsibility. Put your life together. Develop a vision. Unfold all those manifold possibilities that lurk within. Be a force for good in the world, and that'll be the adventure of your life.
A real underlying question for me is, why didn't I just keep my mouth shut? And ultimately, I think what happened was, through the recurrent investigations that I was put through, I think that I became somewhat morally protected. I felt like The words of Esther 4:14, have you considered you're in the position you're in for such a time as this? They really rang true in my life. I had access to information people didn't have. I absolutely was doing my responsible duties. I was doing my due diligence. I was reading 2, 3, 4 hours a day, trying to keep current on all the issues going on with the Minnesota Senate, the COVID pandemic worldwide, and trying to hold my family together as well. And in the end, I felt that I was absolutely entrusted to be a voice, to watch out for those encroachments on our liberties, to say, no, we're not going to let government expand willy-nilly just because they can.
I like that opening. Good start, good start.
Dr. Scott Jensen has practiced family medicine in Carver County, Minnesota for 35 years. This is also where he and his wife, Mary, a small animal veterinarian, raised their 3 children. Christy, an anesthesiologist, Matt, an estate attorney, and Jackie, a family doctor. Dr. Jensen also served in the Minnesota Senate from 2017 to 2021, and he was vice chair of the Health and Human Services Committee. Good morning, Dr. Jensen.
Good morning, Nate. It's good to see you, Dr. Peterson.
Good to see you. I understand
Ooh,
it's
his
3
mic
in the
is
morning
awful.
there. I'm in Rome right
Your mic is awful, bro. Also, I am going to turn this down a little bit more.
now, so I guess this is the best we could do in terms of scheduling. So thank you very much for agreeing to do this today.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm actually in Chaska, Minnesota, and I'm right across the street from the Catholic Church, so we do have something in common.
Right. You're symbolically near Rome.
Amen.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into this. Let's first of all start by letting everybody know who you are, and then we'll move into what has happened to you right from the beginning in relationship to your entanglement, let's say, with what's supposed to be your professional governing body, and it's supposed to be professional governing body. And so let's walk through the details of your employment first. So,
well, Dr. Peterson, again, thank you for having me on. I'm a small town kid. I grew up in southern Minnesota in a town named Sleepy Eye. Pretty typical upbringing. It takes a village to raise a child. My mom was my best friend. My dad was my hero. I had 3 brothers and a sister. I went to the public school and graduated as valedictorian of the class, but that's not such a big deal when you only have 65 kids in your class. I went to the University of Minnesota and was going to be an orthodontist, but when I got into dental school, I found out that I did not have a love affair with teeth. So I left dental school and went to the seminary for a year. And at the time, I'd been dating this really wonderful lady. And so that year in the seminary, I made the decision to ask her to marry me, and we've been together for 45 years. I also made the decision to go into medicine.
Congrats, bro.
So I went into family practice, went to the University of Minnesota Med School, did my residency. And my wife is a veterinarian. We have 3 wonderful children. Our 2 daughters are physicians. We're not exactly sure what happened to our son, but he's an attorney, but we love him just as much. And we've
well,
had
there's 4 physicians, probably need 1 attorney.
He says that he has to keep the rest of us out of trouble. So that's
Right,
that's where we're landing on
Good
it.
claim.
So then I've been practicing medicine for about 37 years in the Chaska, Watertown area. And about 8 years ago, I was encouraged to run for the Senate in Minnesota. This had not been one of my bucket list items.
Cold like
So I
Minnesota.
was leery about it, but after a couple of months of being recruited, I made the decision to run for Senate. I ended up winning and receiving more votes than any other Republican Senate candidate in Minnesota. During the first 3 years of my Senate career, I have to confess that I was disillusioned with the process. I was surprised at how easily gridlock was the order of the day. I felt like really genuine, fired up intellectual curiosity just wasn't a part of the equation. And that frustrated me quite a bit. At the same time, my wife was having some health issues and she was going to have a need for multiple surgeries. So I made the decision
I hate this guy's
to
mic,
not
bro.
run for
Holy shit.
re-election. A few months later, COVID hit. COVID hit hard. It hit everybody hard. But I think I, like so many other people, suffered from certain personality traits. I'm somewhat skeptical, and medical school taught us to be skeptical. I've always been sort of addicted to context, and I've always thought that if we don't have
Addicted
the
to context is odd
of
phrasing.
what we're seeing, we can't really digest what we're dealing with. And I had access to more information than many people did because I was vice chair of the Health and Human Services Committee in the Senate. And so I was aware of much of what was going on. And then in the early days of April of 2020, when I received an email from the Department of Health with a link to the CDC advising me as a physician that they were going to adjust the way death certificates were completed. And without meaning to be any kind of grand whistleblower, I ended up making comment about this on a local TV program that I'd been on the news for. And that traveled
What
quickly.
did adjust death certificates mean?
Basically, in the Minnesota Department of Health communication to the physicians, they said, if you believe that COVID-19 may have contributed to the cause of death, you can go ahead and put it down as the cause of death. And that's not right. The CDC, the CDC for decades has said that our job as physicians when we complete a death certificate is to try to identify the initiating event that started the process of demise for the patient. So, for example, if I have a heart attack tomorrow and a month later I have congestive heart failure and we find that the heart attack was so substantial that I've lost the ability to effectively pump blood, and we learn that I'm not a candidate for transplant and there's no remedies for my situation, and over time I falter and become more and more frail, and perhaps I go on hospice knowing that I have end-stage heart disease. If on my last 48 hours of life on Earth, I get exposed to COVID-19 without ever being tested or even having any symptoms of it, when I died of a heart attack. The underlying cause of death would be coronary artery disease, and that led to a heart attack, which led to congestive heart failure. But it should not say that COVID-19 was the cause of my death. We were being encouraged to go ahead, and they said in this document, if you think that COVID-19...
This is such an important aspect of what happened during the COVID pandemic that I've talked about many times, and people seem to like write it off like it's somehow unimportant or can't be true, or they find some way to dismiss it. It's very crazy to me because this is obviously pivotal to the entire contextual understanding of what actually happened during the pandemic.
Was a contributing condition, you can put it down as the cause of death. And I said, no, there's a box 2 on a death certificate called contributing conditions. That's where you put contributing conditions. If it's emphysema, if it's asthma, influenza, we put it in the contributing conditions box. We were being told with this disease, we could put it as a cause of death. I raised a ruckus and said, this isn't right. I did not get any response from the Department of Health. Instead, I was asked to be on numerous national TV programs. I was asked to be on the Ingram Angle, and subsequently Rush Limbaugh came to my defense, and we had Tucker Carlson show on inviting me. But the bottom line is, this was April of 2020, and in June of 2020, I received a letter with red letters stamped confidential from the Board of Medical Practice advising me that for the first time in my career, my license was under investigation.
So the CDC suggests to physicians that they alter their death notification practice in the case of COVID, listing, as you pointed out, contributory cause of death as a primary cause of death. And so this begs 3 questions. The CDC reconstruction of the guidelines. First of all, why in the world would they do that in the case of COVID? Second, who would do that? And third, what does that do to the reliability of the death statistics that are used to calculate the virality and lethality of COVID?
Those 3 questions are...
The third one being the most important in my mind. because we need to establish the reality. Before we figure out the who's and the whys, we need to actually have a real understanding of the what. And the third one is a huge direct contributor to the understanding of the what.
Are, frankly, the critical ones, and they're interrelated. The first one as to why the CDC would do this. It felt to me like there was a movement or a strong motivation to, if you will, elevate the seriousness of the COVID pandemic. I think that it was already elevated substantially, and that troubled me deeply. I raised that question early on. I said, I think we're making an epidemic of fear as much as we're responding from a public policy perspective. So when the CDC did that, it felt to me like they wanted to ensure that they got our attention and that there would be numbers to support that. As to who would do that, I think later on we found out that some of the major characters were people that were indeed in charge of the public policies that were going to govern the world, if you will, for the next 3 years. Specifically, you had people like Dr. Tony Fauci, you had Dr. Deborah Birx, you had some of these people who had, if you will, high-placed positions from which to speak. They literally had absolute power. And I'm a big believer that absolute power corrupts.
Corrupts absolutely.
And I think the third question is probably
Power
the
corrupts.
most important
An absolute
one,
power corrupts
Dr.
absolutely.
Peterson. What impact would this have on the reliability of our federal registrar in terms of cause of death? For instance, every year in America, in the United States, we have approximately 650,000 people die of heart disease. We have approximately 600,000 people die of cancer. If those deaths are recorded instead of cardiac causes, and putting it down as COVID, numerous things happen. One is we might get a false impression that we're making headway on heart disease when we're really not. You might see pharmaceutical companies coming to the fore saying, see, we told you, if you take our drugs, if you prescribe our drugs, put more people on Lipitor, we will reduce the heart cause of deaths. And that would be not true. That would be a corruption of the actual data. There would be all kinds of nefarious opportunities for people to grab a hold of corrupted data and make a case for something that wasn't real. And when I raised that point,
like I said, you're obstructing the view of what reality is.
I didn't get a legitimate discussion. There was no robust questioning. It was, you're spreading conspiracy theories and you're having the audacity to cause or to compare COVID to influenza. And those were a couple of the first allegations.
So let me ask you a nasty question then, to play the devil's advocate. So we walked through your career and really very, very briefly your life, and it's a real American fairy tale life, small town American fairy tale life. And so a skeptic would say, especially a skeptic who's arguing from the other side, let's say, would say, well, you missed the limelight, there we go, because you were no longer involved in the political scene, and you got a little bit of attention because you complained about a perfectly reasonable request from the CDC to be, what would you say, hyper careful in relationship to the lethality of COVID. Then a bunch of right-wing conspiratorialists like Rush Limbaugh and Tucker Carlson rushed in, and you got some attention on the national stage, and that went to your head. And so it was in your best interest to cast aspersions on the motivations of people who were only trying to benefit public health, and this is on you, which I presume is the tack that the governing board of your profession essentially took when they came after you with this confidential letter. So what sort of soul searching did you do when this first came up, and how do you protect yourself against those sorts of insinuations and allegations and even doubts?
That's a good question. I think it's important to look a little bit at the timeline. It was in the summer of 2019, which was well in advance of the COVID pandemic, that I had made the announcement that I was done with politics. My wife's health was at an issue, and she was going to have multiple surgeries. So I had already announced that I was not running for re-election. So in 2020, when the COVID hit, I was serving my last year as a senator. I was vice chair of the Health and Human Services Committee. I carried a large insulin bill through and worked with Democrats to get it done, and Governor Walz signed that.
I'm out of rage.
At that point in my life, I had made it pretty clear that I was not interested in being in the limelight. I was interested in stepping away from politics and being there for my family. My wife's health was an issue, but I'd also been blessed with 5 grandchildren within the span of about 2 or 3 years, and they were all under the age of, I believe, 4 at the time, or perhaps even under 3. So it was time for me to continue to practice medicine, to take care of my wife and be a grandpa, and I was very content with that. So in terms of some underlying deep-seated desire for fame and infamy, I would say that that's almost ridiculous, because the slings and arrows I ended up taking were hurtful. I had never been in a situation
Right.
like
Well,
this.
you also had some limelight, politically speaking, already. The fact that you'd run a political campaign, you'd been out in public, and you had a reasonable share of public attention. But you're also interestingly well situated, because you are a physician of long standing, and also you were a senator, and was it vice chairman of the Health Services Committee?
Yes. And the other thing...
So you'd think that all of that would have demonstrated your qualifications to speak on such matters.
Dr. Peterson, when I was a resident, I was named one of the 15 top residents in the country through a Meade Johnson Award program. In the late 1990s, I was awarded a Bush Fellowship to study leadership, computers, and plastic surgery techniques. In 2016, I'd been named the Family Physician of the Year in Minnesota. I've had a wonderful career. I feel at times a little bit like Jimmy Stewart in It's a Wonderful Life. There was no reason for me to put all of that at risk and put myself in a position where people would ridicule me, literally monitor every word I said in order to try to play that gotcha game and hit me with something. It was tough on my wife. During that last year in the Senate, the first year of the pandemic, 2020, it was a painful year. I'm not going to deny it. We had schisms within my own family. We had plenty of tears and angst. And it would have been fun to not have to go through that. People have asked me, they
preferable for sure.
They said, Dr. Jensen, what was that like? How did you know all this was going to happen? And I've told people, I didn't know. Quite frankly, I feel a little bit like Jonah in the Old Testament, where he was asked to do some tough duty in Nineveh. And he said, no, thanks. I'm going to take a cruise on the Mediterranean. That's what I feel like. But then this whale got in the way, swallowed me up, and spit me out on this pathway of ridicule and, if you will, focus on everything about my background. And it was tough to go through.
We'll be right back. First, we wanted to give you a sneak peek at Jordan's new documentary, Logos and Literacy.
So when are we getting the biblical series one that
I
he's
was
doing?
very much struck
The
by
Genesis.
how the translation of the biblical writings jump-started the development of literacy across the entire world.
Illiteracy was the norm. The pastor's home was the first school, and every morning it would begin with singing.
The Christian faith is a singing religion. Probably 80% of scripture memorization today exists only because of what is sung.
This is amazing. Here we have a Gutenberg Bible printed on the press of Johann Gutenberg.
Science and religion are opposing forces in the world, but historically that has not been the case.
Now the book is available to everyone.
From Shakespeare to modern education and medicine and science to civilization itself.
It is the most influential book in all of history, and hopefully people can walk away with at least a sense of that.
When I spoke with Jay Bhattacharya recently, he went through a similar experience at Stanford, very similar. He's an outstanding physician and an extremely reputable person. And he expressed some extreme skepticism about the COVID hysteria. And Stanford basically turned its back on him. And he lost 35 pounds in 3 months, and it just about killed him. I mean, I've talked to probably 100 people now who've been in the situation that you were in, the situation that I've been in a number of times. And virtually all of them were pushed to the limits of their psychological and physical tolerance by that process of cancellation and mobbing and exclusion, you know. And some of the people I know quite well who are as stable personalities as...
I wish I could understand that. Like, I mean, to some degree, I get how, like, it can be rough going through that kind of, sort of ridicule, like public ridicule and condemnation. You know, like, I logically get that that's difficult, but I don't empathically understand, like, the amount of suffering that must be. I wish I did. I wish I could empathize more with that particular thing.
You'd ever hope to encounter were driven right to the edge of madness by this insane mob-inspired persecution. You know, and I actually think that the degree to which that affects you is proportionate to some degree to your moral integrity, in that a person who's highly conscientious and hardworking, diligent, detail-oriented, all of that, is also tends to be somewhat guilt-prone, in that any accusation of abdication of duty strikes a person like that to the heart, because they are in fact dutiful. Now, if you're incompetent and unconscientious and parasitic in your fundamental orientation towards others, and someone accuses you of not doing your duty, you don't...
Doesn't mean much to you.
You have never regarded that as a necessity or a virtue in the first place, and so those criticisms fall on deaf ears. But if you've been gone after having checked off all the proper boxes, let's say, both practically and morally, then it can be incredibly damaging. And it also does produce this internal schism in family, because, of course, it's easy for people to think, well, you know, if you, or at least for people to fight about the issue of, well, maybe it would have been better had you just never said anything, rather than having exposed yourself and others within the family to risk. And, you know, there is an argument to be had about that, because it's not obvious when you should just shut the hell up and keep on struggling forward, because, you know, every bureaucracy has its inadequacies, and you can't complain about everything. And when you finally have to stand up and say something, and of course that is going to
finding that line is difficult to
tensions
determine
within
for sure.
families, especially if you're also under other forms of stress. By this time, had your wife recovered from her medical trouble?
Mary had gone through 2 surgeries and then had a 3rd surgery. She'd had her neck fused. She'd had a new joint put in. And so she was recovering, but while she was recovering, unfortunately, a lot of the conversations the two of us would have at home while she's convalescing seemed to always come back to COVID-19. So it was a challenge. And you're exactly right, Dr. Peterson. There was a real underlying question for me is, why didn't I just keep my mouth shut?
Is it worth the struggle?
Ultimately, I think what happened was, through the recurrent investigations that I was put through, I think that I became somewhat morally
Galvanized? Morally
protected.
galvanized, I think.
I felt like the words of Esther 4:14, have you considered you're in the position you're in for such a time as this? They really rang true in my life. And I felt a little bit like a pit bull with a pork chop in my mouth. And I wasn't going to let anybody take that pork chop of truth out of my mouth. I had access to information people didn't have. I absolutely was doing my responsible duties. I was doing my due diligence. I was reading 2, 3, 4 hours a day, trying to keep current on all the issues going on with the Minnesota Senate, the COVID pandemic worldwide, and trying to hold my family together as well. And in the end, I felt that I was absolutely entrusted to be a voice, to watch out for those encroachments on our liberties, to say, no, we're not going to let government expand willy-nilly just because they can. And I found myself getting tenacious. And I remember someone very close to me said,
I
well,
continue to think the right word you're looking for here is you were galvanized, so the pressure galvanized you in the best possible way.
important to be right. And I said,
Truth matters.
I don't think it's about being right. I think it's about being fearful of what I was seeing. When a rubber band is stretched beyond its capacity, it never returns to its normal shape and configuration. That's what I'm worried about with the United States, Canada, nations across the globe. We've seen something happen over a 3-year period that prior to those 3 years, most of us would say couldn't happen. If it had been put in a movie, we would have said someone's been watching too much grade B fiction. But the bottom line, it was happening right in front of us, and we were stunned.
All right, so you picked up this letter. It had "Read Confidential" written over it. And, well, so here's a couple of questions about that damn letter. So the first is, you'd think that if, and what's the precise name of the board that sent you the letter? And this is the Governing Board of Physicians in Minnesota.
This is the Physicians Regulatory Agency regarding licensure, and it's called the Minnesota Board of Medical Practice. The Minnesota Board of Medical Practice, MBMP.
Board of Medical Practice. Okay, so you get a letter from the Minnesota Board of Medical Practice. Now, here's some mysteries about that. So the first mystery is...
Hold on, people. I need another 60 seconds. I will be right back. Okay. Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to call it today. I got to call it earlier than expected. I thought I was gonna have about another hour. But things have come up and I have to go. I guess I'll see you guys next time, man. Damn. Yeah, I really didn't want to have to call it today this early, but here we are. Oh well. Well, as always, I hope life is the journey you need it to be. I hope you all have a fucking blessed day. And I will see you next time. Bye for now. Peace.